Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Groover. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I am Kathy Groover, and we are so excited to welcome another amazing guest. So we have talked on several shows about trapeze and how I do trapeze and how much I love trapeze. So we actually have a real life trapeze artist on the show, Ryan Schneider, who I've known for years down from Santa Monica. He has some exciting news. His career has taken a very exciting turn. So we brought Ryan on to talk about that journey and living that dream and how to accomplish those things that you really want. So welcome, Ryan. We're so excited to have you.
What's up? Nice to have me.
Nice to have you. It is nice to have you. It is nice to have you. So tell us your background, like how you got into trapeze, circus, and your journey along with that, and then share your exciting news with us.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, it's actually an interesting story. And a lot of people, like now there's a new generation of circus performers that are coming into circus that didn't originate from circus families. And obviously that's my story too, because my family knew nothing about circus other than that it was usually run by circus families. And I was living in Los Angeles and I was doing some acting work out there. And simultaneously, I was working as a waiter. But I was, the very first instance of how it happened was I was at a restaurant. I was working in a tourist area, wasn't getting tips because of the tourism and they didn't understand tipping in America, blah, blah, blah. I was so frustrated. I went outside and I took a walk to like calm myself down. And I saw this trapeze setup and it said Trapeze School, New York. And I was like, that's weird. They have schools for this. And I was wondering what it was all about, if you have to take classes, if you sign up for a semester, like, and at the same time, the owner had come up and he greeted me and he started telling me a little bit about it, talked me into taking a class. And I was like, well, that's cool. I've always wanted to do gymnastics as a kid. I wanted to learn how to do flips and stuff. And so I thought, well, that'd be fun and it's free. So he talked me into it pretty easily. And then after my first class, I just got hooked on it. The adrenaline, the excitement. And the one thing that I really enjoy about activities that I do is the physical nature of them. So the physical aspect of being actually able to do something where you're in control of making things happen. That's what really attracted me to doing it. And I got really attached to it quickly. And so from there, just taking a single class turned me into, they eventually gave me a job as an instructor and to a rig manager and to where I was producing the shows that they were doing there. Wow. And that kind of just evolved as I started to get more into it. I realized this was more of a physical nature. It wasn't gonna have the lucrative payoff as a movie star, but I really like that immediate gratification of seeing an audience happy, like the live aspect of performing. Mm-hmm. And I've always been a performer. So this was really a new kind of platform for it. So I completely quit the acting and I put all my energy into this. I connected with a family that lived in Las Vegas that let me come out to Vegas a couple times a month to train with them, which I'll mention them later on too, because they're a big part of where I'm at right now. And it just kind of developed from there. I just kept networking, kept training, waited till the right opportunity and the timing came along. And it kind of landed me through this interesting journey that has me now here at Cirque du Soleil.
So excited for you.
Yeah, it's such an exciting journey, and it obviously hasn't been without its pitfalls or its difficulties. I mean, obviously not coming from circus and not having the exact network that you need to have an opportunity to succeed takes a lot, you know. But you just keep working hard, and eventually, just like in a trapeze, the timing is everything. And so the timing of how I fell into my first position to my second to the audition for Ringling Brothers, and then how that turned into the job that I worked at in Japan for 4 years, ultimately led me to this right here. So it's been an exciting journey, and I'm happy to share all of it with you guys.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. So let me ask you this. How old were you when you stumbled on the trapeze rig in Santa Monica?
I had just turned 26 years old.
Yeah, and I bring that up because people think that, you have to start doing circus when you're 3 and you go to the circus school and you go to the circus college and we know people at the rig here in Santa Barbara who, they went to an actual circus school and like they trained in all these different apparatus and all these different skills, and there's different ways to have this journey, and it's not relegated to the 15-year-olds. can start this
Right.
sort of journey at any time. And that's exciting because so often, I hear my clients go, well, I'm too old, I can't do that. I missed the boat, I can't do that. It's like there's always opportunities to follow that dream. And it might look exactly the way you thought. You're not the star now, but my God, you're freaking touring with Cirque. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Same
And
for me. It's like,
I'm almost 40 years old.
yeah, I
So
gave up
again, we talk about the age aspect of it, and
yeah.
It just doesn't matter. It depends on like what your goals are and how determined you are to really get to them. Instead of using it as an excuse as age or physicality, you use that as a motivator. And yeah.
And you never, I was just saying, you just never know how it's going to turn out. Like, I never thought I'd step off stage. So when I stopped acting, I went, shit, like did I give up my dream? And now I'm motivational speaking. So I'm going around the world. I'm still on stage. It's just a different outfit, a different accent. I'm still doing silly voices, but it just looks different. It's the same thing in a different package. And I think people give up things way too easily.
That's
ahead,
exactly.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
That's exactly like, I didn't mean to cut you guys off either, but I just wanted to piggyback on what you said, because I thought I was going to be an actor. I thought I was going to do the acting thing because that was what I understood of performing, like whether it was on stage at theater or whether it was movies and film. Like that was my idea of what a performer was. I didn't realize this avenue was a potential for somebody who wasn't born into it. And so, like you said, you go onto a different stage and you don't realize like that's a cool outlet that your body already is in tune for.
Yeah.
Well, I love your story because like you said, I mean, there's been a whole bunch of serendipitous events that have happened over your life that have gotten you to where you're at now, right? Which is, I mean, for what you're doing, this is kind of like the pinnacle. I mean, Cirque du Soleil, come on, right? That's like the premier, thing to be able to do from this standpoint. And I think it's interesting because, like you said, and this is true for everybody who's listening, right? Is, those of us that have lived a little bit longer, maybe we understand it a little bit more only because we've experienced it. But I love that idea. You walk by, you see the rig, you're open to it. You're curious to it. You're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Why don't I try it? Right. Which is something we talk about on this show. Just try it. Right. You might like it. You liked it, and again, it's these little touch points over time that your life is unfolding differently than maybe you expected. But I'm hearing that it's like unfolding in ways that you never would have imagined and that are just amazing.
Right. And it was interesting because taking a step back, I didn't mention this in depth before, but I was working in Japan for 4 years. And after 2 or 3 years, I kind of realized like I'd seen enough of Japan and I really wanted to spread out and see other parts of the world. And I knew trapeze or circus was a way to do that. And so we decided to just end our contract in there, my wife and I, and try and find other work. And when we ended our contract, we didn't actually have anything really lined up. And it just so happened that I had found a contract with Cirque du Soleil prior to the pandemic. And then, so I was already excited, like, okay, this is going to happen. This is like, finally, like it's built up to this. And then the pandemic happened. So then you go through this emotional roller coaster, not only what's happening in the world, but the potential of your career being here to being like possibly no longer existing. And again, it's just part of that roller coaster of you really don't know how it's going to turn out. And when you get those opportunities, whether they last or whether you're able and prepared to take them.
Well, I have two questions regards that. So you said, I know the story of how you met your wife, Tycho. So circus also led you to the relationship of your life, which is pretty phenomenal. So if you want to tell that story, but the other thing is how as a performer, because I know so many people whose shows were shut down and they couldn't train during the pandemic. How did you adapt what you were doing and get through that time? Because that must have been so hard.
Great. I'll start with the wife question because I'm sure she'll watch this and she'll want to hear that. When I moved to Japan, she was already working in the show. She's from Japan. She grew up there, and this was the first circus that she had worked in. But she was there for about 4 or 5 years before I actually got to that circus. And then it was a few years before I actually could get her out on a date. And then from there, it developed the 2 years dating her. I eventually talked my boss into getting her on the flying trapeze team with us. And naturally that leads to like more build of confidence and trust amongst a relationship. I mean, because, there's natural trust that's required in flying trapeze as it is. Mm-hmm. But then we developed obviously from that. And in that circus, we were living in such a small Eric, we're living in shipping containers, basically a long shipping container divided into 3 rooms, and we were in one of those rooms. So we had a 6 foot by 9 foot home, and we had to either get along or break up. And that's what helped us develop our relationship until after we left that contract. She decided to come with me, and she believed that I was going to be able to find us work. And ultimately, like I said, I had got a contract, and she also had gotten a contract with Cirque, but they were going to be separate shows. So that was a challenge. But when the pandemic began, it kind of brought us back together because, we didn't have anything else to do. And I didn't want her going back to Japan because I didn't know how long this pandemic was going to last and if or when we'd be able to see each other again for quite a while. So she came back to Dallas, and this kind of leads us into the pandemic of what we were doing. Being a performer and obviously not being able to do flying trapeze, we found that using social media and creating videos through social media was another way for us, or at least for me, because she loves performing as well, but it's like a passion of mine to get people's reaction, to see them enjoy life, or to see them entertained, and to read them in the comments of like how something that you did or presented or taught them changed them in some way, whether it's for the moment or for a longer period of time. Those kind of things are what really drives me to perform. And so we just every day we were constantly thinking about ways to create different ideas and content and follow some of the trends on TikTok and Instagram. And we made tons of videos. And I even actually connected with a company. They caught my eye, like one of their advertisements on Instagram, and I reached out to them. They eventually hired me, and I'm still actually working with them doing content creation and managing their TikTok platform. So it's been nice being able to use that and catapult that into another complete different industry of retail sales. And that's it's been a challenge, but it's also been fun to be able to learn how to create in that environment. And Taiko's been a huge help in all of this production, because sometimes I need her to hold the camera, and she's learned how to catch certain angles and what frame rates and all these mean. And but she's also been like she's not a great actress, but she's hilarious. Like
she is the foil to everything. Your guys' videos are so freaking funny. I mean, and she tends to be the right person. She's sort of the Abbott to your Costello.
Yeah. When I give her a little direction, she takes it like over the top, and it's brilliant because there's so many different levels in there, and we take just like a typical TV show or film, we do quite a few takes so that we can make sure we get the right thing in there. And it's funny to see just where she goes with some of this stuff. And like we made some good content, and most of the comments are obviously about her because she's beautiful and she's talented. So and people are probably tired of seeing me by now, but at the same time, hey, as long as it entertains and it brings attention to whatever the content is.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, I think that's a great lesson for people, right, that are listening, because I know a lot of times I'll say, look, folks, we're talking about trapeze or circus, but we're not really talking about trapeze or circus, right? Is that, because I heard you earlier on say that you loved seeing an audience happy. That's why you wanted to be a performer, right? And so, again, a lot of people, they go the acting route. You and Kathy both gone that route, right? But then it didn't work out, but you still have that desire to make audiences happy. And so you find some other way to accomplish that, right? And so then you said, you got the contract with Cirque, and then the pandemic and all that shit happened. Well, you still found a way to make the audience happy. It's just through a different medium, yep. Right? But you're still able to kind of live your purpose and make people happy in some of these other ways. And again, 3 years ago, you never would have thought you'd probably be doing this.
Right. Well, and another part of it too is when you come from circus, there's no unemployment really. There's no, you work, you get paid. You don't work, you don't get paid. And so we also needed another way of income. And I had built my YouTube channel around the idea of circus and our lifestyle and living in Japan, and how us as an interracial couple, how we interacted, and some of the, when we were in Japan, everything was new to me for the first time. But when we got back to America, a lot of the stuff was new to her. So we had a way to kind of keep this content going. But at the same time, we were starting to make a little bit of money from social media. So we thought, well, maybe this will be a way to supplement our needs, because as a couple with a dog, if we don't have income, we're under a bridge sleeping or something, and fortunately we both did really well about saving our money, and we don't spend frivolously, but at the same time, like, we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to be. So,
Yeah.
We need to find income, and social media and performing and finding that outlet was like the only option I really looked at. And I started thinking like, well, I'm doing good on social media. Maybe I can learn how to be a social media marketer. And I started getting to the back doors of like this stuff. And I'm like, no, ultimately it's like, I want to be the creator. I want to be in front of it. I want to be directing and designing what is happening rather than like guiding other people's products. And that was one of the great things with this other company. And I don't know if I can mention them, but
Sure.
It's called The Perfect Gene. Their marketing is brilliant, and they're very edgy, and like, they're not typical, they're tongue in cheek. Like, it's very edgy humor. They use eggplants a lot to symbolize, and
Symbolize what?
Yeah, Kathy doesn't understand that reference.
Their slogan is "fuck your khakis," basically. And so, like, obviously, like, this is kind of within my sense of humor. I can tone it down or I can beef it up depending on what we can get away with on what platform. But they allowed me full control of the content that I was creating using their brand. Nice. And so that was like really exciting for me to not be like just helping them drive their brand by editing videos for them or designing campaigns, but like, no, we want you as basically a spokesperson for the brand. And it's done well. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm a huge reason, but their company has grown really well over the last year and a half. They've only been around for almost 2 years now. And they've just been growing amazingly. And I think a lot of it is because of the social media. That's basically their marketing is all social media. And I must have made about 100 videos or clips or edits for them the last 2 years. And I'm just excited to see how the company is doing and being a part of that kind of creation,
Yeah. Well, so many words are coming to mind during this conversation of stuff that Jason and I talk about all the time, like pivot and adaptability and kind of, go with the flow, be curious, be present, all these things that we talk about, because our objective with this podcast was to help people unlock their limitless potential, right? And it started out as this very businessy show where we had, business consultants, and then we moved into hypnotherapists and psychics and astrologers and, now we've got a circus performer on, and people might go, oh, what does trapeze have to do with business? Everything Ryan just said, I mean, it really does, and it's exciting for me to get to share your story with everybody, because I know it, and I know you personally. I've known you for a while. I love you and Tycho, but it's exciting to hear, how did you manage a pandemic when you literally went, we're going to be sleeping under a bridge unless we figure this out. So I love that adaptability and still finding a way to entertain people, because your videos are just fucking hilarious. I mean, I love you. And we'll give all those handles at the end for people that don't know your stuff. It's so funny. So,
yeah.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I know a lot of musicians as well, and they were in the same situation, right? Especially for the gig musicians who would, normally play at restaurants or do some other stuff, a few times a week. If they if they were touring, same kind of thing, right? It's like everything just went. And so they had to use social media, and a lot of them, show up and do like one guy I know, I think he does 2 Song Tuesdays and a Thursday something or other, right? Where he gets on Facebook Live and he just plays songs and talks to people that are in the live thing, right? And it still provides him a way to be able to serve and show people and give a little peek behind who he actually is, right? Because as you were talking about what you and Tycho are doing, and you brought up the whole point, you guys were in Japan, you were kind of the outsider, Japan is an amazing place. I love it. But yeah, it's totally different than America, right? And now she's here, and you mentioned interracial couple, right? So it's like you guys are actually helping people in so many other ways that you probably don't even realize just by sharing your story.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a lot of people, again, they're not in the circus, but they can relate to what you guys are going through as human beings too.
Especially now when the world is divided as it is, and how people want to find an excuse or a scapegoat or a fall guy for every problem that they have.
Yeah.
You know, like I was actually worried when I started seeing some of the headlines about how Chinese people were accosted and assaulted because they were Asian looking, or Japanese people were assaulted because they look Chinese, or people couldn't understand because they're Asian, because this thing originated in China. And I was starting to worry because like, I know how brutal we can be in America. And on top of that, you have the political division that's intensifying some of this stuff. And it really kind of put a worry to me, but like you were mentioning, showing how the diversity can be strengthening rather than divisive is another kind of, it was a very small part, but it was still a part of our philosophy and our mission through the videos that we make. And, you know, we always try and keep everything nice and clean as much as we can so that we can reach a wider audience, but also so that it gives us credibility to the movement or the purpose for showing that, you know, interracial relationships are not taboo. There's nothing wrong or different about them. It's just two humans that happen to be born in different parts of the world that, hey, may have grown from different types of beliefs and ideas, and they can collaborate, they can compromise, they can make babies. And it's okay. It's okay, you know?
Yeah. And then your babies are going to be beautiful, by the way.
I can't wait.
Yeah. I mean, because you guys are both just stunning looking people. So yeah, it's going to be amazing. And the other thing I love, and I love that you, Jason, that you brought that up about the interracial and inspiring others to have that, is the other thing is there's this conception about actors, performers, definitely circus people, that there is no monogamous relationship. That everybody's just banging everybody. And you know, I have an artist friend who used to do what he called these little dirties. He was this amazing,
gotta hear about that.
This amazing artist, but he and his wife would he'd draw something dirty and slide it across the table to her, and she'd draw. She was an artist also, and they went back and forth with these little coffee cup dirty drawings. And he did one called The Circus. I have the print, I have the artist proof of it, and it is just this, you know, people in circuit just fucking all. It's just this very dirty thing. And he said the reason he drew it is because that's what everybody thought actually went on in circus. Right. Now, I'm sure there's a part of that, you know, but you guys found love in this environment that isn't necessarily the place that normally happens, right? And same thing with me. It's like I met Eric at the trapeze rig, you know, and we have this great longer term relationship now. And same with you and Tycho. And it's like, it's so exciting to see love come out of something that you guys are both so passionate about. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in there.
I think that's it's an interesting concept. And one of the things I mentioned to you guys before we started this podcast, but I'll mention to the audience, is that when you're in a traveling circus, your community is all you have. And so you naturally have this tendency to grow amongst each other. And if you're looking for companionship, you're either going to be a playboy for whatever city you're in, and then you're going to be looking for that relationship or love or companionship every single week, or you're going to find that within the relationship of somebody in the circus. And so that naturally leads itself to have and because circuses are usually people who work in circuses, they work for a year in a circus, then they move to another circus, and it's very transient in that nature. It tends to lead to that incestual orgy type feeling of people coming in, you change relationships. It's convenience, it's companionship. So you stay with that person, they leave out or you leave out, and it changes so frequently. So it naturally kind of can have that connotation. But there's also been stories just like mine and Tycho's. There was another girl that I worked with, and she found love with another guy in our show, and now they're married and they have a baby on the way. And it's not uncommon to find somebody who not only you're compatible with, but can really supplement you in a relationship in the way that a long-term marriage really requires. And so you get everything. You get that natural community, you have to be with these people if you want that companionship, or you're gonna be a slut. Or, if you're open-minded, or if you, like me, I'm 39 years old right now. When I met her, I was 35, 34. I've been through enough relationships to know that being a playboy isn't entertaining anymore. It's not something that I need a person, I need to be looking differently at relationships rather than just like an overnight stand, you know? And so that's when I met her, I wasn't looking at like, let's get married, but I wasn't looking at her as like, oh, hit it and quit it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like, if I'm going to look at the qualities, and if she has the qualities to continue on in a dating relationship, then I'm going to look for the long-term in her. And if I find that, hopefully she finds that in me. And, you know, I wasn't like just looking for somebody to lay in bed with, but, you know, people come into circus or come into any job at different stages in their life with different experiences in relationships. And, you know, whether your age or your experience in relationships dictates it, when you're in a work environment, you're with those people more frequently than sometimes your friends outside of work. And so you naturally are going to grow some kind of crush or companionship or kind of interest to be smitten. And it depends on what you do with that is what
absolutely
changes. And I just quickly, I had this conversation with a coworker of mine who's been a friend of mine for a while. And I said, it's not uncommon to be married and still have a crush or to still like be infatuated by somebody else. But what you do with that is what makes you the human, the good moral person that you are. You know, some people can't control that. And they're like, I gotta go bang it, you know. Other people are like, oh, that's cute. That's an attractive person. Oh, she has a nice body. That's it. I can see that. I can acknowledge that. But does it make me want to change the way I feel in a relationship? No. Does it make me want to do something that's going to jeopardize a relationship? Hell no. So like, that's where I think the difference comes into where, you know, some people do have this perception of like, it's very an incestual type of business in circus, but in the end, it's people at work, and it's going to happen whether you work at Starbucks with 10 people, you work in an IT call center, or you're in the circus. You're going to naturally be gravitated towards certain people. And if you have the right mentality about going into a relationship, that's going to determine how it goes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you said that because it's true. It's of course it's happening at Starbucks, and it's, you know, and when I was an actor, I fell in love with every leading man I ever had, right? Because you can't pretend to be in love with someone for 8 weeks and not start to have those feelings. And you're right. It depends on, well, what do you do with it? You know, if it's the action behind that, that thought. So yeah.
And if you have enough relationship experience and you've had enough experience being with a lead actor and you're a lead, then you understand like, okay, this is my mood. This is my emotion for now. It doesn't have to be a long-term emotion. You know, you're playing a role that's good and you get involved in that. Or even if you're not an actor or you're in a work and like, again, you recognize like, this is a person that I'm really attracted to. Well, if that person's married or you're in a relationship, you have to understand, like, you cannot act on that without consequence.
I say you can, but
there's consequences.
There's going to be some fallout. Cool.
Well,
Beautiful.
And I think that brings up a good point. Again, another lesson, because we're talking about certain things, but we're talking about other things, folks, right? Is you know, what you're just talking about there is you know, it's who we are, right? And every different environment, how do we choose to show up, right? Can we separate the work from our life, right? And again, so, you know, acting just in general, I mean, you guys are both in the industry, you know how relationships often go in that area, right? Because again, it's you have to get into that role to be convincing in the play or the movie that you're doing, but can you walk away and separate yourself from that work? And again, there's plenty of great, you know, examples of people that have been married to the same person for 30 or 40 years in Hollywood, right? So, but the people who can't separate it, those are the people that turn to substances, that turn to, you know, relationships and other stuff like that. And you can see when people kind of crash and burn in the industry, it's just a visible industry, but it's the same thing, like you said, whether you work at Starbucks or an IT call center or whatever, it's the same thing. And can you decouple that and realize who you are as a person and stay true to that? Right. Instead of allowing your life to be in circumstance, waking up 5 or 10 years later and hating yourself because of who you've become that is not who you really are.
And I think a big element of that is really knowing yourself. And if you don't know yourself, finding a way to love yourself. And it's so cliche to say that, but if you know the type of person you are, you know the decisions that you should be making for yourself. If you're completely lost because you're living in this world where like you don't know who you are and you don't know what's going on, then of course you're going to be like experimenting with making the wrong decisions. And that's just part of the experience of growing up. And then once you've been cheated on, or once you've cheated on somebody else and you've learned the fallout from that, or you stole from your company or somebody's stolen from you, whatever, once you feel that experience, you know, like the next time, don't put your hand on the stove. Like you don't want that result.
Hopefully, yeah. Yeah.
If you don't want that result.
Oh, I love this. Okay. And of course we're out of time. And I love that part of the conversation, because that's something that I don't think is talked about enough, is relationships and fidelity and who you are and who you want and all that good stuff. So yay. Oh, Ryan. Oh my God, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for doing this. So tell people all your social media handles. When does the show launch? Like, when do you start to tour? All that good stuff.
So right now we're in Montreal. We're finishing the last week of training. We're training the act to integrate it into the show that was already going back a year and a half ago. We'll go to Houston to start 5 weeks of staging with all the other pieces. And then the show's going to open up in Houston on November 13th. We're going to stay in the United States, mostly on the West Coast, I think, for the first part of next year. Our schedule is going to be updated on the Cirque du Soleil Alegria website. So if you want to see the dates, you can go there. Also, if you follow any of my social media, my YouTube is going to have a lot of updates of like what's happening, what's going on, a little more in depth. My Instagram stories will always be telling you everything that's happening daily. And then TikTok, you'll find some different clips and videos. We make different things with challenges, but also try to incorporate it with circus and trapeze, and now with Cirque du Soleil. And all of those platforms, my handle is Ryan S. Acrobat.
Yay, Ryan S. Acrobat. Yay. Congratulations. I cannot wait to sit in the audience and see you catching the show. I'm just so thrilled to do that and get it. And knowing that, you caught me a couple times. So, I mean, that's actually, it's like I was caught by a Cirque du Soleil.
Knowing you said West Coast, so that means you guys got to be in LA or somewhere in Southern California.
I hope we do. I hope we do California. I know right now the only thing that's booked is Houston and Seattle. That's the only thing we know for sure.
It's a quick flight.
Things change because of the differences in the counties and with the pandemic we're still dealing with. So
Cool. Excellent. This has been so much fun. Okay, so Ryan S. Acrobat, go follow him on social media. Check out the Cirque du Soleil site for Alegria so that you can find out where and when he's going to be performing. And I'm Kathy Groover. I can be reached at kathygroover.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So go out, have a great week, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. See ya.
See ya.